I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing the book Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This book was translated from Japanese, though I couldn't easily see who the translator was, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Nancy Wu. This book was so sweet and charming and poignant, and I just had so much fun reading it. It's about Kiko, a 36-year-old woman who has been working at the same convenience store for the past 18 years, and people are starting to ask questions about that and wonder why she hasn't moved on to something else and why she doesn't have a more, well-rounded life. And so this book is all about just kind of being a misfit and finding yourself and finding the life that works best for you. So I highly recommend that you go read it. It is very short. You can just fly through it and then come back to hear what I have to say about it. So I loved Kiko. I thought she was an amazing character. I loved the way she looked at the world and the way she described everything. And I especially loved her description of working in the convenience store and how much she loved it. You know, the very opening of the book starts with her just describing how in tune she is with the store and how much she loves everything. And this job that other people would think of as fairly menial, she just adores and gets so much satisfaction out of. And I don't know anything about Japanese convenience stores, but I think they're nicer than what we think of as a convenience store in America. When I first heard the word convenience store, I was picturing the little store attached to a gas station that's usually not very nice and is fairly grungy and people just run in while they're getting gas, and it's not usually the cleanest place and just not the #1 place you would want to work. From the book's description of the store, I was picturing it being more on par with maybe our Target, where it's still a job that lots of college students take, and it's not one that, you know, people think of as a good career option, but it's a nice, bright, happy, clean place to work that focuses a lot on customer satisfaction and keeping the store bright and friendly. And it definitely made me hungry for Japanese snack food. It sounded so delicious, and I want to try all the things. I don't know what rice balls are, but they sounded delicious, and they had all these interesting drinks and stuff, and I just am very hungry for Japanese food now. So I think I'm going to have to go find an Asian market and get some snacks and try some stuff, because this book made me very hungry. So based on this description of the store, you could see why Kiko liked working there. It was a nice place to work. She had a lot of fun keeping on top of things and observing the businesses around and keeping track of the weather and doing the best she could to figure out how to help the store and how to promote it. And she wasn't a manager because she didn't quite have the people skills for that, but she cared about the store a lot and helped the manager a lot and focused on it so much. And I think one of the things she loved most about this store was that people treated her so well, and it was kind of the only place and the only time in her life where people had actually valued her, and she knew how to talk to people, and they didn't kind of shun her and treat her like some strange outcast, and she could actually really relate to people and do something that was valued and have kind of the most meaningful personal connections that she'd ever had. So Kiko was definitely different from a lot of people, and throughout the book I was kind of wondering if maybe she was autistic, but that didn't seem quite like it. It seemed more like she was just very focused and analytical, and she loved the training videos that actually told you how to make normal human expressions. That was one of the most kind of autism spectrum things about her. But then she could interact with people fairly well. She just didn't quite understand the way that other people viewed the world, and she viewed it from a very analytical way, which worked for her, and she was happy. That was the biggest thing, you know. Everyone was always trying to fix her and telling her that she should have a more fulfilling life, but her life was fulfilling to her, and planning the things for the store and talking to the manager about store things was a much more meaningful conversation to her than talking about her social life. And she did get a lot of really good things out of her view of the world, too. When people said things that would really hurt other people's feelings, or that other people, you know, like people would say fairly cruel things to her, and she would not be offended by it, or people would go off and start ranting and stuff. When Shiraha would talk, he ranted a whole bunch and stuff, and Kiko was really easily able to sift through things and say, all right, he's saying this because he feels this way, and that's clearly invalid. Oh, and that's a good point. And she had this wonderful ability to just think of what people said in this sort of removed way that really helped her kind of understand them really well. And I thought it was so sad that she'd spent basically her whole life just trying to please other people. You know, it talks about when she was a very little girl, she figured out that just saying things that came into her head upset people. So she wouldn't offer an opinion or say anything unless someone asked her to. And that seemed like a very hard way to live your life. And throughout this book, everyone was asking why she didn't have a career, why she wasn't married, and she really wanted to please them, and she wanted to not make them uncomfortable. And she could understand human interactions in a way better than a lot of other people could, because she could tell that people, pick up inflections and way of speaking from listening to each other, and she could see that the way that they kind of clustered in groups and interacted with each other, and she could analyze these things really well, and she did her best to mimic them. I loved it how almost every time she spoke to someone, she said whose tone of voice she was copying when she spoke to that person. And so basically her journey on this book was trying really hard to make people happy. People told her she needed a career or a boyfriend, she needed to get married, she needed all these things. And so she tried really hard. She met Shiraha, who was also a social outcast. And he was kind of a very interesting contrast to her, because they were both very socially awkward and they were similar in a lot of ways. But Shiraha was very unhappy and felt like a victim and blamed the world and thought that life was generally unhappy and not good. And Kiko was happy with her life and looked at the world in such a positive light. And so it was so interesting to see. She could have been negative and bitter like Shiraha, but she was so warm and happy and just enjoyed life despite all the hard things that had happened to her. And it was so interesting, she had Shiraha move in with her, and they got engaged and did all these things to try to please people, and she could tell that it was pleasing people. And it was really interesting when she first started going back to the store after Shiraha moved in with her. She said, it helped, it made things better, I could tell people were happier. And then she described all these circumstances that made her working at the store less enjoyable, but she was really trying, and she said this made it better because other people were happier. But she really wasn't happier at all. And it was interesting that she had all this pressure for a career and a marriage. I don't know if that is stronger because she was from Japan, I'm from the US, or it could have been just that she is from a bigger city. She was 36 years old. She's about a decade older than me, so she would have more pressure for that kind of thing. And just, I think in a bigger city, people tend to be more competitive. I'm from a relatively small town where you have lots of people who don't really do anything besides work at a part-time job. So the pressure, I think, is a little bit less intense than what she was experiencing. But she was trying so hard to make everyone happy, and she wasn't even lying, really. She was just saying things and letting people jump to their own conclusions. And she tried to correct her sister on it, and her sister was horrified and started crying. And so Shiraha had like his sweetest moment in the book, I thought, and came out and said, oh no, we just had a fight and she's being dramatic and we're really a normal couple. And that made her sister so happy, and she was working so hard to make her sister happy. And she would have done it. She would have married Shiraha and spent her whole life trying to make people happy. But then you get that last moment when she walks into another convenience store and she just comes alive. And it was so well written, because when she walks into the store, she describes it, and it reminds you of how happy she was at the opening of the book, and how being in this place just makes her feel so connected and fulfilled and just generally love her life. And it was so great that she decided, you know what, I am going to go work at another convenience store. And it didn't matter that it wasn't her same one, because the people turned over anyway. What she loved was just working at the store and the feeling of being there, and that was so amazing. And I loved it that she goes on this whole journey, and at the end of the journey, it's good she did it. She understands herself better, she understands the pressure from people and everything, but she decided that who she is the best version of herself, and she doesn't need to change. Just because other people want her to be different, that's their problem, and she is really happiest working at a convenience store. And I just thought that was so wonderful. So this book was amazing. I thought Kiko was a wonderful role model, and we should all try to be more like her and just love ourselves and do the things that make us the happiest. And I was so proud of her and just so thrilled that she found the thing that makes her happy, and she's going to do that and just spend the rest of her life being in the convenience store where she is happiest. And maybe she'll, who knows, she could move up management or something, or she could not. As long as she just gets to keep working there and being a valued member of the team, she'll be so happy. And it was just such a wonderful ending, and this book made me just so happy and was just a great reminder that life is really wonderful and that you should really just do the thing that makes you happiest, and that you don't need to conform to other people's expectations, and that as long as you're doing what makes you feel happy and satisfied and fulfilled, then you're leading the right life for you.